Before attempting to write a letter to the editor, you should know the basics. As I mentioned in the previous video, the style, format, and content of a letter will depend on the particular publication you're addressing. Today, we'll consider how to go about drafting a letter to The Economist. The Economist is an English-language weekly newspaper with around 1.5 million subscribers. It's globally focused with special sections on world politics, business and finance, economics, science and technology, and culture. The Economist takes an editorial stance of classical liberalism, so it tends to write favorably on free trade, globalization, open immigration, and cultural liberalism. Its readers are probably a bit more sophisticated than average, appreciating subtle and well-supported arguments. The Economist runs a letters section each week, and letter writers range from well-qualified experts to the slightly above-average reader. Most letters are serious. However, the last letter in every issue is often a funny jab at the paper's diction or content. Letters to The Economist follow a simple pattern. There are 6 parts: salutation, opening, turn, evidence, conclusion, and signature. Let's consider each. Letters to The Economist have a distinct salutation. Sir. All caps, followed by a long dash. It's simple, polite, and to the point. This is not the place to get fancy. Conform to the norm. The opening is a one-line introduction that identifies the subject of the letter. It's often a statement of fact indicating what The Economist has said in a previous issue, and might even include a partial quote. A citation to the original article should be included in the opening sentence. The citation is usually formatted as a parenthetical with the article title, in quotes, along with the month and day of publication. However, if you use the article title in your opening sentence, you should not repeat it in the citation. Many successful letter writers will open with a complimentary tone. This isn't necessary, but it does make for a sharper turn. The turn is where you point out the error or inadequacy of the article you're addressing. It's usually 1 or 2 sentences long and should clearly articulate your position. I call it the turn because of the contrast with the opening sentence. Whereas the opening indicates that we're old friends, the turn makes it clear there's a disagreement. The salutation, opening, and turn of a letter are very important, since that's the first thing your reader, and before that the editor, will see. If they are poorly constructed or uninteresting, your letter will never make it past the desk. Here are a few examples from letters I've published in The Economist. Sir, you suggested that the supply of Somali shillings is fairly fixed, despite a number of forgeries. Article Hard to Kill, March 31st. In fact, it was the introduction of forged notes that ultimately removed the incentive to increase the supply of shillings in circulation. Sir, I take issue with your claim that minting developed not as a private sector attempt to minimize the cost of trading, but as a government operation. Article On the Origin of Specie, August 18. Historical accounts of private minting during the California gold rush clearly demonstrate that a government mint is not necessary for regulating the amount of metal in each coin. You'll notice that I rushed the turn in the second letter, including it in the opening. Why is that? Well, the evidence I presented in that letter, a long quote from an old book, ate up a lot of words. And nothing is more important in letter writing than word count. Ideally, a letter will be around 150 words. Unless you're an important dignitary or CEO, your letter should never exceed 250 words. Even then, it's probably best to be brief. Think of a letter as print media's equivalent to the tweet. Make your point and make it fast. Now that you've made it clear who you're writing, what you're writing about, and what concern you have, it's time to support your case. What counts as evidence for a letter? Well, that depends on the particular concern you have. Baseless claims can be addressed with data. A supported claim might be refuted by explaining why the data employed in the original article is inappropriate. If you have a problem with the underlying theory the article employs, briefly articulate a better theory, or note that most professionals in the area reject the theory endorsed by the article. Perhaps include an example that makes it clear why the original article is in error or lacks subtlety. Regardless of what kind of evidence you employ, it's important to be clear and concise. Keep your sentences short and punchy. Never use two words where one will do, and never use a big word when you can use a small one. And to the extent possible, avoid jargon. If you must use jargon, be sure to explain what the words mean. This takes up precious words, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Okay, you've made your case and you've made it short, but don't stop there. Be sure to include a 1 or 2 sentence conclusion. You don't need to recap the letter like you might do for a longer work, but you should provide some resolution. Return to that friendly tone you had in the opening. The conclusion is an excellent place for a bit of humor. A pun, subtle reference, or quick turn of phrase in line with the usual style of The Economist goes a long way. You've showed them the error of their ways. Now let them down gently. After all, you're old friends and you can't wait to read their next issue. End your letter with a signature. As with the salutation, this should adhere to standard practice. A simple name and location will do. If you have a relevant title, be sure to include it here. Letter writing can be a lot of fun, and it gives you a chance to have your voice heard. With the basics under your belt, you'll be more likely to get a letter published. So get out there and get writing.